Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Here comes. Woo. Wow. Oh, well, hello. Welcome to Illinois Stories in Quincy. I'm Mark McDonald. Unfortunately, this is a scene that Quincyans have seen way too often lately. In the middle of July, an enormous storm tore through Quincy and killed a lot of trees like this, tore some of them down, split some of them, like this pin oak. And the problem now is cleaning up all those trees and planning how did a Tree City USA plant new trees and regrow a lot of trees. And Ann St. John, you've been in this Trees for Tomorrow for a long time.
Yes, I have.
And now your organization is faced with more of a chore than it's ever had.
It's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity for us because there are some trees that have come down that should never have been planted where they were. So we'll replace them with trees that are more appropriate for that area.
Yeah.
And we're also going to be diversifying the urban forest a little more so that if we have a pathogen come in, it doesn't wipe out all of one species. We'll have more, we're heading for 20%, no more than 20% of different species. I don't think we can do it because we have too many trees up already. Yeah. But that's our goal.
This pin oak here was described as being well over 100 feet tall, maybe 150 feet tall.
Yes.
And it split, the storm just caused it to split down the middle, so it had to be removed. Other trees and hundreds of trees in Quincy were just destroyed in the storm.
Thousands.
Thousands destroyed.
Thousands of trees. Hundreds alone on the right of way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thousands. I mean, if you take in people's private property, it was incredible. Our streets were 70% blocked. We had piles 6 feet tall of debris in the street. You couldn't see anything.
Trees for Tomorrow, rebuild the canopy. What a job. What a job, Ann. My goodness.
We have a challenge before us, but we'll meet it. We're a very small group, but we're a mighty group. And we know how to get the money. We know who the people are that love trees, and they will back us. We've already had people already who want to donate and back us all the way.
Yeah. You and I have changed locations. We're in a backyard over on, were we on Hampshire?
Jersey.
On Jersey. We were in a backyard on Jersey when we saw the big tree come down, the big pin oak. We're now at Madison Park, and your group, Trees for Tomorrow, has gone around, and everywhere you see one of these white signs, you'll see where a tree was damaged beyond being able to be saved in that big storm in the middle of July. And it's safe to say there are dozens, maybe 3 or 4 dozen big old trees here.
Hundreds of years old.
Oh my goodness, hundreds of years old, and they're just gone. They're even cleaned up. Quincy was so industrious about getting on this and getting these things cleaned up. There's almost nothing but stumps left.
I know. When we first drove by here the day after the storm, it just looked like a big jungle. All the trees had fallen over each other, and it was just like shock and awe. You know, you couldn't believe what happened.
It would be like if you went back home after an earthquake and you couldn't find anything that looked familiar.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute.
Oh man.
And we have all these other trees that are severely damaged that may come down as well. I think probably they will.
Yeah.
Don't know how many that will be, but first we have to attend to what's down.
Yeah.
Get those up, get them out, and we're already planning what we're going to put back in here. It's up to the Park District, of course, to make that decision.
Yeah.
But what we're going to try to do is get as close to the trees that were here. We'll plant another tree near it, the same species, unless it's an undesirable tree that we really don't want, like an ash. We wouldn't put an ash in now. Right. And we will be putting some other trees in as well. So
it's ironic that this much damage would happen at Madison Park because this park was designed as a tree park.
Yeah.
Way back when, I mean, all the trees were chosen for a specific purpose and planted in a specific location, so that now, all these decades later, you would have these big, beautiful trees right where they are, and unfortunately, they're no longer here.
But we're going to put them back. I won't see them, you won't see them.
No, that's right.
But
Somebody,
our grandkids will.
somebody will. Maybe there will still be a group called Trees for Tomorrow,
Absolutely.
and they can
Absolutely.
enjoy it and plant some young ones too.
We'll keep it
Yeah.
up because we're a tree city and we love our trees.
Well, you mentioned the Park District. We have a gentleman here from the Park District. Let's go talk to him and see what their plans are.
Okay.
Matt Higley, you're the Director of Parks for the Quincy Park District. I'm looking at a list here that shows by park the number of trees that came down. I don't guess anybody got hit as hard as the public parks, did they?
No, we got hit pretty hard.
32 public park facilities and more than 350 trees down, and that means destroyed. They're down. How in the world did you guys get all this cleared up so fast?
Our 3 hardest hit parks, Madison Park, South Park, and the island, Quincy Island, we hired a contractor to come in and clean them up. Otherwise, we probably would have been there until snow was flying.
Oh,
trying
maybe
to clean
years.
Them up. Yes.
I mean, and they're so big. Some of these are, well over 100 feet tall.
Right.
And gosh, it's a remarkable, and it's not just the Park District, the whole city,
Right, the whole city.
Everybody, the county, the municipalities, private landowners, they all had to deal with this. What's the plan like? How do you start over again?
Oh, well, the Trees for Tomorrow are, they got a fundraiser going, and what we're going to try to do is we're going to plant as many trees back, the same species that was there, and try to go about it that way.
Yeah. If we look behind you there's a big old oak tree. You can see it's got a tag on it.
Right.
And there was a Boy Scout project at one time that went around and tagged these trees. So you all do have a record of what was where, and
Right.
you can sort of get close anyway to what kind of tree goes where you want it to go. But since you've been working for the district, have you ever seen damage like this?
No, we had a pretty bad storm in 2011, but it was located more of the southern part of town.
Yeah.
And this took the whole city of Quincy.
Yeah, this was. If you could localize all the stuff, you'd say, well, we'll get that wrapped up in a short time. But when it's this widespread, it's a whole different issue, doesn't it?
Right.
Looking at some of these, you said the hardest hit parks were Madison Park, 27 trees down. South Park, 73 trees down.
Trees, yes.
My goodness. In this program, we're also going to visit Woodland Cemetery.
Right.
They got hit terrible, and those trees over there were probably the oldest in the whole area, weren't they? Well, listen, Matt. Good luck with all that you have to do, and you got your work cut out for you. You guys are going to be real busy, aren't you?
Yes, we are.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We mentioned that Madison Park was very carefully mapped out, and all the trees were chosen specifically for their location. And if you look at this now, there were 162 trees planted here, and this is the map of the original plantings. And the yellow markings that you see were all trees that were lost in this storm. And the attempt will be then to go ahead and replace trees of that same type, if that was a successful tree, in that same location. But you can see by looking at this, my goodness, just devastated. And it was so carefully planned. Well, Bob Kerstrup, I guess there's nobody who's been working harder than people in the arborists in the tree business, and you've been in Quincy for some years. You've never had to work this hard, have you?
Oh, this has been incredible. This is just devastating. I've never seen this kind of damage. I mean, we've had areas of Quincy hit really hard over the years, but not the entire city.
Mm-hmm.
Not the entire city. This is nuts. This nuts.
As we stand here, we're on the kind of the north central part of town, north of the mall. Much of the city has been cleaned up now. It's a month after the big storm, but there are areas like this in backyards and wooded areas that just you can't get to, and it's just indicative of how bad the storm was.
Exactly, and the general public doesn't get to see this kind of thing. The monster trees that are down in backyards that are just like you said, almost inaccessible. That makes it awful tough when you can't get any machinery in there.
You said 40 years in business doing this in Quincy. You've never seen it like this. What is your crew? What's it been like day to day for your crew?
Oh, it's been hard on them. It has, and we've been working weekends also, but we're going to quit that. We finally got the worst of the emergencies handled, and I found over the years that you work them too hard. This is a lot of physical labor.
Oh yeah.
And the temperatures haven't been great either. But I found you work them too hard through the week, then come Monday, they're not 100%, you know.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and there's a safety factor too. You
Sure.
know, you gotta be careful. What we do is it's dangerous work. I mean, that's the reason our insurance rates are what they are.
We were watching you guys work at the top of this program, and you brought down you trimmed down that pin oak tree that you brought down, and then the main what the branch is, what's it called, the trunk. The trunk came down. You could tell it's very hard work cutting that wedge out of there and getting that big thing down, because it's just big around.
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
it's tough. With the right equipment, it helps, but it's just whatever you're doing with tree work, it's just hard work. It really is.
What do you say to a customer who's been your customer for years, and they have to wait weeks to get work done? I mean, it's hard, isn't it?
It just breaks your heart. These are people that have been your bread and butter, they've taken care of you, and you've taken care of them for 40 years, and all of a sudden, you got, wow, they dump a year's work on you in 15 minutes. You know, it's disheartening.
It's kind of like triage at the hospital, you know. I mean, you got to take the worst cases first, right?
That's what I accused my wife of. I said, "You're in charge of triage." She handled all the incoming calls. And it was so overwhelming. I don't want to look at the entire list. You give me the super dangerous ones. Let me get those first.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at the list. It's too depressing.
Yeah, there are too many people I know that I can't help right now.
Oh,
yeah. You mentioned this was kind of like a perfect storm too, because not only did we get that massive wind going through here, but it had been a very wet year, and that worked against it, didn't it?
Oh, yeah, double fold. I mean, the trees, especially the healthy trees, had put on lush new growth, more new growth than normal, which works against them. I mean, you get more surface area holding water, more surface area catching wind, and this was a gusty wind, which is worse. A straight line wind that isn't so gusty doesn't do near as much damage.
Yeah.
You get a limb that gets a hell of a push, and it doesn't go, but then it comes back to center or maybe beyond center, and it gets another gust when it's got momentum with it.
Boom, yeah,
A sustained wind doesn't do as much damage what a gusty wind does.
And if the roots are wet, if the ground is wet, they're much more likely to topple over, aren't they?
Much more. They just don't have the strength there.
Yeah. Look at that. What's that behind you? Is that a maple back there?
Yeah.
That's a perfect case, isn't it?
Sugar maple. Yep, exactly.
And a big tree like that's a good, healthy tree. That shouldn't come down, should it?
No. In solid, dry dirt, it wouldn't have. And if we'd gotten all this wind before the trees were leafed out, we'd almost have no damage.
Yeah.
But the leaves, I mean, you got all that surface area to collect weight and catch the wind. It's
like a tent, or an umbrella,
exactly
the way it goes.
Exactly. It's amazing with that kind of wind and as wet as the trees were that any of them stood.
Yeah. What kind of trees is this grove mostly made of here?
These are black locusts.
And they're planted close together, which also works against the whole thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, not necessarily planted. They were there. There was a natural grove of locusts here that came up. You see them pretty often in our area.
So being close together meant that one could knock another one over, knock another one over, knock another one over.
Well, they stay tight, and more trees come up. They protect one another. But once they start dying out, and like we talked about, you start growing grass, and don't let the new sprouts come in and take over again. These big guys, they can't take it.
Yeah.
Don't have anybody to help them.
Wow. Well, when do you think you'll be able to call yourself and your company caught up?
Oh, we've got the worst of the nightmares done right now, but we'll be removing damaged trees from this storm for at least 3 years.
Oh, man.
At least.
Yeah. Well, it's your business, and you're glad to have the business, but you also love trees, and you just hate to see the destruction, don't you?
It's horrible. I know some of these trees can't live forever, but many of them didn't deserve this. I mean, they had a lot of time left. It's just wrong.
Well, Bob, thanks for taking time out of your day. I know you've got a lot of work
bet.
to do, but it's good to give people a look at this and see what has been done. Yeah.
It's amazing. Ann asked me to try and figure how many trees the city lost. And that's tough, but I was guessing somewhere around 12 to 15,000 trees we lost.
In Quincy?
In Quincy.
Wow.
Yeah.
12 to 15,000.
And those are the ones that are actually down, not the ones that have to be removed yet, that are so riddled that they're unsafe or unhealthy. It's a mess. I mean, it's incredible.
Well, thank you, sir.
You bet.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mayor Moore, we have seen a lot of damage in this program. We've gone to 3 or 4 locations, and for the uninitiated, it's pretty scary when you look at it. What did you think when you woke up that morning and you had seen what had happened to Quincy?
Well, it was really devastating. We had 70% of our roads were impassable, and so you really had a appreciation for how powerful the winds can be, and that just happened in a 10-minute period. So it was really devastating for the community, and the tricky part was if we had any type of emergencies for first responders, to get them to where they needed to go, because many people had to take detours just simply getting back to their houses when the storm occurred.
I mean, when I read about what was going on, it seemed to me that the town was virtually closed down.
Yeah.
And unless you were an emergency worker, don't even try to go somewhere, right?
That's it. There were live power lines down, and just even for me to go to the emergency operations center took me an extra 10 minutes from what it normally does. And of course, then people start worrying when they know their power is going to be out for a number of days. There were long lines at the gas stations and all that. So it was quite a sight to be seen.
Yeah. We're looking over your shoulder now. We're on Main. And this is just an example of the kinds of trees that are down all over the place. Big, old, beautiful trees.
Yeah, I mean, Quincy's home to a lot of historic homes, but also historic trees, and it really makes you sad. We were going to have a big dedication for a Lincoln tree later on this year, and that got damaged and ruined. And so now the work begins of replenishing our treescape, and we're celebrating 175 years in the city of Quincy this year, and our forefathers had the vision to make trees an important part of our story, and now we need to do what they did, and that's replant for future generations to enjoy.
Ann was telling me earlier, she's been in this tree business for a long time. She's been planting trees for a long time. She says, you won't be here and I won't be here, but somebody's going to benefit from this.
That's right.
And they will. There'll be generations that we don't even know about yet. We'll be benefiting from it.
Well, and that's our job in our society, is to make sure that we're leaving our city or our state or our nation a better place than what we found it. And I think the community has really rallied around each other during this storm. And I tell a real quick story. We had over 150 work orders that needed to be done of citizens who couldn't move debris, and we had over 300 volunteers sign up to help neighbors helping neighbors. Companies lent their support. We had a whole corporation and church day in the city of Quincy where companies and churches took the day off to help neighbors, and it's just been a tremendous community effort.
Yeah, and now the effort is to try to get the community once again engaged in purchasing trees to be little trees to be planted, so that someday you'll be a tree city again.
That's right. It's not only important for the city of Quincy, but for our parks. We have really historic parks. We're known for it in the city of Quincy, and they suffered a lot of damage. And so, many parks, you're not going to have the same enjoyment for a few years as you did before, because there's not as much shade. And so we want to make sure that 175 years from now, our parks are just as beautiful as they were then, or just as beautiful as they are now.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, thank you.
Iris, when you get a storm like that, you always worry about losing the historical stuff, because in a lot of cases it's been weathered, weakened, and if you get a straight line wind like Quincy got that's going to blow 150-foot trees down, it could very well blow that monument down as well, couldn't it?
It could. It's been standing here since 1867 when it was dedicated. 148 years ago, never been touched by a storm, but it's sheared off the top of it. The eagle is intact over here. Fortunately, only its beak was chipped, and the rest of the spear, some 20 feet, is down and will have to be taken up with a crane. So it's going to be a monumental piece of work, speaking of monuments, and it's one of the first things we have on our agenda, because it is a centerpiece of Woodland Cemetery.
You're one of the friends of Woodland Cemetery, right?
Yes.
So you're very involved in keeping this up and keeping the historical quality of it, and keeping a cemetery up is not an easy thing to do, because all the stones have to be, cared for. The lawn has to be mowed. Everything has to be trimmed. There's a lot of care involved, isn't it?
There's a lot of care involved, especially in this very hilly terrain, as you see here. It's very, very difficult to get down these slopes and to keep everything pristine. However, it is one of those things that we're working at, getting better at. And there is a master plan for Woodland Cemetery that we developed several years ago, which will incorporate planting trees that don't get as large as these gigantic 200-year-old trees that came down. So if we plant more undergrowth, and we have done that with the help of Trees for Tomorrow. We planted 30 trees last fall.
You help them out too, don't you? You
Yes,
volunteer with them as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also these trees were kind of left over at the end of the season, so it was really terrific to have them offer them to us.
Yeah. As we look into the back, of course, we can hear in the background the work crews they're just chewing up these trees that have fallen. That's a never-ending job. It's almost 24 hours a day just getting rid of the mess, isn't it?
It's been since the 13th of July that they've been working, quite literally. And they have the chipper, that's what you hear going.
Yeah.
And the giant, huge logs have to be sawed up and removed in pretty big chunks. So the crew has done a wonderful job of really working hard at getting done what has been done. And it's hard to imagine because I didn't see it in its early days of the storm either. The gate was closed, we couldn't come in. And I happened to be out of town, so I didn't see it for a while.
Lucky you, lucky you. Pretty depressing for those who did.
It's devastating.
Yeah.
35 trees came down.
Just in the cemetery?
Just in the cemetery, and yet many of those came down on marble obelisks, and they knocked them off, but they're intact. So with the offering of a backhoe, which we will have, we can also put those stones back up on their pedestals, and they should be fine.
Well, thank you very much for bringing us in here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Chuck Schultz, as the former mayor of Quincy, when you looked around the city that night after that storm hit, what were you thinking?
Broke my heart when I saw Madison Park, where I grew up playing, hiding out from school, right down the street from where I lived. Literally, if you understand Quincy, the trees are an integral part of our quality of life here. People identify with that, and these great trees are a part of our history. Where we stand right now, where John Wood bought this land with a land grant from the War 1812, these trees were here. We have trees in Washington Park that gave shade at the Lincoln-Douglas debate. People have gone up and down Main Street for
we were doing that during this program, looking at all the canopy that was gone.
That's our signature area. And of course, with these dedicated volunteers, we are going to rebuild it. And I may not see it as it was, but maybe my grandkids will. And that's important because somebody planted those trees for us.
Yeah. It's going to take a massive effort, though, because you're talking about something in the neighborhood of 15,000 trees went down.
It's incredible. And we've had great support already. Business leaders in the community stepped up. Now we're getting a lot of philanthropic support. We're going to go out to the general community and say, just sponsor one tree, please. And I think people will respond. I know Quincy will be all right, but this is the type of thing that shakes you up, but it pulls our town together.
Yeah, and you know what's remarkable too is that, you know, as much damage as there wasn't any human carnage to speak of, which is just remarkable.
Nobody even went to the hospital. We had one chainsaw accident following the storm, but and that was minor. So God blessed us that way.
Yeah.
And frankly, I've talked to arborists that explained to me that a lot of these trees were just about ready to go. If you look at some of the trunks, you'll see they were hollowed out and so forth. And of course, we had such a wet summer. The ground was saturated. So many of them came up by the roots, and it brought the sidewalk and roadway with it.
Yeah.
So it's going to take a while, no doubt about it, but we've started already and we won't stop till we get it done.
Yeah. Well, Chuck Schultz, for you and everybody that helped us with this program, this was hard to do because nobody wanted to really look at this devastation again. It's almost cleaned up, you know, nobody wanted to really revisit this, but you and a bunch of volunteers who were trying to put this effort together did, and it's good because it'll help get people involved.
It makes you feel better. I have ancestors right here in this historic cemetery, and I think we're obligated.
Yeah. Thank Chuck Schultz. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mark.
And, you know, if you're a lover of Quincy or a tree lover or just somebody who thinks, gosh, that community needs a hand, there is a way to do it. You can go to their website and give them a hand to help replant some of these 15,000 trees that are now gone. With another Illinois story in Quincy, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you. For a DVD copy of the program you've just seen, send $19.95 to Network Knowledge, P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, subject, and when the program aired. You can also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605.